I'd like to welcome Professor Olsen, Master's degree in Civil Engineering, PhD, Laboratory of Heating and Air Conditioning, Technical University of Denmark since January 2004. Full Professor in Indoor Environment and Energy at the Technical University of Denmark and Director of the International Center for Indoor Environmental and Energy at the Technical University of Denmark. Once again, he's very active in ASHRAE. We also like to know and welcome once again as the Vice President of ASHRAE. Please welcome Mr. Olsen.
Thank you, and I'm honored to be here and see the activity of the chapter. You are certainly the most active chapter in Europe, and I can congratulate you, and you are a good example for some of the other chapters here. So my talk today is about standards related to the indoor environmental quality. We know today the focus is on energy, not only on this conference, but in many places. But mentioned also by the presentation of Bill Barnslett, the focus of everything in building is the indoor environmental quality. So I'm going to talk a little about the standards that we have and some recent development. So let's see if we can get this here to move. Yes. So this slide here, I think, shows very clearly how important the indoor environment is. Because if you look in an office building and you try to see what cost the owner will have on an office building, and you say the cost to pay people is a factor 100, then the energy consumption for this building is only 1% of that. So that means when we save energy, we have to be sure that we don't sacrifice the indoor environment and lose productivity of people. When we talk about the indoor environment, when we look at the global picture, we have very extreme conditions. From the WHO, there are values showing that about 5,000 people are dying every day due to poor indoor air quality, and that is developing countries, and especially women are exposed to particles and so on from burning fuel for cooking. But on the other hand, we also have people like here the Princess on the P, which are so sensitive to the that no matter what, they will never be satisfied with the indoor environment. So it's almost impossible to make an indoor environment where everybody is satisfied, because we are very different in what we would like. So the issue is here to find what is acceptable for most of the occupants. When we talk about the indoor environment, we talk mainly about these physical factors like thermal comfort, has to do with temperature, humidity. We talk about air quality. It's difficult because often we specify the requirements to the air quality as requirements to the level of ventilation. Noise, acoustic, and also lighting, illumination is important for the indoor environment. And also you could say how long time you are exposed. If your exposure time is very short, you can relax on the criteria. But also personal factors, first of all, what people's individual expectation is, but also what are they going to do in this particular place? Is it a working place where they have a high activity, or is it a school or an office where they mainly have sedentary activity? Is there a dress code you have to take into account? These have significant influence on what is the best temperature. When we look at some of the most used standard international today, we have for the thermal environment We have a basic standard which is both an European standard but also an ISO standard, dealing with a method to evaluate the thermal comfort by using a index PMV/PPD, but also talk about local thermal comfort effects. This is very similar to an ASHRAE standard 55, which has been available also for many years, and you will see a little later that there's not so much difference between those two documents. Then we also from ASHRAE have standards related to the indoor air quality, both for residential and for non-residential building. And basically they are talking about the requirements to the amount of ventilation. On the European level, we established together with the Energy Performance Directive some years ago a standard including criteria for all parameters like air quality, thermal environment, lighting and acoustic. Criteria that should be used for design of system, but also for the calculation of energy performance for the certification. Because if you don't, by changing these criteria, you can get almost any energy performance you want. So it's important that we make sure that you are using acceptable criteria. Also on the European level, there is a standard which are requirements to the systems, the ventilation systems. These are only setting requirements to the indoor environment, not to the systems. These have now all been all under revision, and they will be out for inquiry, so you will have a possibility to comment on them. The one European standard, there's also work going on in ISO to make a similar standard, so there are some parallel work. And the European is part of the mandate for the Energy Performance Directive. This will also have a technical report which explained in more detail some of the criteria that has been recommended. It's very important with this standard related to the Energy Performance Directive that there will be default criteria in an annex. So all the numbers, criteria, which I will show you some of, is kind of default. On the national level, you can put in your own criteria, but it has to be in the same format. So there will be another annex with kind of empty tables where you can put in national values. I'll show you some examples of that later. We have in the European standard decided not to specify levels at one level of specifications. We see sometimes you can relax on the specification. This is what we normally recommend, category 2. But sometimes, especially when you have people with disabilities who have to occupy the space, you have to be more critical with your criteria. And also between countries there can be big differences what they want to specify. So you will see now in the specifications, we basically for most of the parameters we specify on 3 or 4 different categories, which all will not impair health, but there may be differences in comfort. When we talk about the thermal environment, which probably also the criteria here is also the ones that has most influence on the energy use in buildings. We first of all are talking about having a general thermal comfort, that is the temperature level is acceptable, not too warm and not too cold. And either we specify it by using this comfort index or we specify it as the operative temperature. And operative temperature is a value between air and mean radiant temperature. So it also takes into account if you have radiant heating and cooling system and so on. And then we have some criteria which are not directly influencing the energy use, but it influences the design of system. Like draft, radiant symmetry, vertical air temperature differences, also floor surface temperature. I will not talk about those, but more about the general thermal comfort. To get these different level of criteria for the thermal comfort in mechanical heating and cooling buildings, we are using this index. And for example, the ASHRAE 55 is mainly based on a range of this PMV between ±5, where we in the European and all the ISO, we also specify some criteria at other levels. You can kind of convert that into temperatures by looking at specific spaces. So for example, if you have a space, an office space, where you have a sedentary activity, it could also be a conference room like here, or auditorium, or a classroom, and people have sedentary activity. And then we always distinguish between heating and cooling season, basically winter and summer. Some countries will have summer all the time, they never need the heating. And the criteria I showed you, for example, ±0.5 PMV, will correspond to a temperature range 20 to 24 degrees. And then we recommend to design our heating system so they can provide 20 degrees at the design outdoor day. If you have less strict requirements, you can only heat up to 19 degrees, or you can design it for more strict requirements. But what we are talking about is not one comfort temperature, but we are talking about an interval. And it shows that you can let the temperature drift within this interval. You don't have to run your buildings at a constant value the whole day. Then for summer, we recommend a higher range because we assume people will have a lighter clothing. And again here, then you use the 26 degree for designing your cooling system. And also for the calculation of the energy consumption for cooling. If we now look at the ASHRAE Standard 55, which was published again here 2000, well, this is 2004, but it hasn't changed in the 2013. Also here we have two ranges. Here we have temperature, and here we have humidity. There's a small influence of humidity. Around comfort is not that big. But for winter we have a range here, which is close to the 20 to 24. And for summer, we have another range, which is about 23 to 26. Humidity has been discussed, and every time we had a new ASHRAE standard, the upper line here changed. At the moment, we have an absolute humidity as the upper limit, and basically no limit below. Because this standard is saying, the argument is, it's only for thermal comfort. We are not talking about the standard for indoor air quality, which may describe more stricter limit for the humidity. What we have done in the European standard is we have specified some ranges for design of if you want to have humidification and when you need dehumidification. We are not requiring that you use that, but if you do, what are the values you should design for? Based on, first time on an ASHRAE, huge ASHRAE study on comfort in building, and especially in a natural ventilated building where there was no mechanical cooling, where people, they could open windows, that was the only thing they could change. It was found that, first of all, of course, people, they changed their clothing more because it would get warmer in summer, but also their expectations to what was acceptable changed. So based on that, a relation between the mean monthly outdoor air temperature and a required temperature range was established. And that has been introduced first in the ASHRAE Standard 55. And then depending on where you are, Stockholm, Amsterdam, it's about the same as we have for the other, up to 26 degrees. But if you go further south, Palermo, you accept with this method higher temperature. In the recent ASHRAE 55, it's basically the same graphic, but it doesn't have to be the monthly mean outdoor temperature. It could be a weekly. There are some other requirements to how you calculate this the outdoor temperature to get the acceptable range. We have similar, based on European study, and in fact it gave almost the same results. There are also a relation with the running mean outdoor temperature. Normally it's a weekly mean. And what is the acceptable temperature range, again in 3 categories. So again here, very similar between what we have in European and in the ASHRAE. What it means is, for example, for Copenhagen, if you have here January to December, here we have summer, that if we were using this, what we call the adaptive approach, we will accept again up to a 26, maybe one peak up to 27. If we use the criteria for mechanical cooled building, the criteria would be 26. So you see not much different on the maximum. But if we went down to Rome, in natural ventilated building, then the upper limit would be like 28 degrees. There is, in both standards, some possibilities to use increased air velocity at higher temperature to make it more comfortable. So here again we have the comfort range for winter and here for summer. And basically, if you increase air velocity, the acceptable temperature will also increase. But in most cases, this is only allowed if you have personal control. If you have your own desk fan or ceiling fan, it's not really acceptable to blow 1 meter per second through the whole roof. So the personal control is here very important. But increased air velocity will help on the comfort of those conditions. What we have seen in Denmark, where we have built low energy buildings now for some time, is that we have problems often with overheating in summer. And in the new Danish regulation now, we will have a requirement saying we only will accept 100 hours of occupied time at about 26 degrees. And of those, only 25 must be about 27. Other countries are also looking at the summer condition. In Japan, they have the cool biz and are often now no dress code, which I had earlier, and they accept temperatures up to 28. But studies show that is at the limit, because what we also have is, and this has not been taken into account in the studies with natural ventilated building, what is the effect of temperature on the performance of people. When you have most people accepting the environment, you also have the highest performance. And if you get too cold or too warm, it will decrease. So we have to be a little careful not going too high in temperature, looking at the performance. Now on ventilation, what is setting the criteria for how much we should ventilate for an acceptable indoor air quality? Yes, today it is mainly the comfort, the perceived air quality, if it smells bad or not. That will probably in 90% of the cases be the criteria which will set how much air change you need. Health is also taken into account, productivity not, energy to some extent. ASHRAE has a kind of 3 procedures. They have a ventilation rate procedure where you have tables with values. I'll show you some example. We have an IAQ procedure where you more or less do like a mass balance on different contaminants. And then there's also for natural ventilation where you more talk about how many openings are needed. So when we look at the sources we have in a building, first of all we have people. That's why we have the building, so we cannot remove them. But we have a lot of other sources for pollution: building materials, furnishing, HVAC system, and equipment. So this also influences your perceived air quality. Earlier we also had tobacco smoking, but in most cases now we don't take that into account. And the concept for calculating what is required ventilation rate is the same in both the ASHRAE 62.1 and also in the European standard. Then we have a contribution for people. We need to know how much we should ventilate per person and then how many people there will be in the space. And we have a contribution for the building. And you will find, here's an example from the ASHRAE standard tables. This is now in IP units with how many CFM per person you have to use and how much per square feet for the building. And then you add them up. If we look at the tables now from the European standard, we have here how much ventilation at the different categories you need for the person part, 7 liters per second per person. And here, the reason ASHRAE is only using here 2.5 liters per second per person, because they're mainly designed for people who are already adapted to the air. You probably all experience that if you go into a space, it may be a smell in the beginning, but after 5-10 minutes you don't really feel it anymore, so you have adapted to the air quality. Same in conference room, if it's not well ventilated, you don't feel it, but if you go outside and come in again, you may feel how bad the air is. So there is a high level of adaptation, and the question is what should you design for? So at the moment, in the ASHRAE tables, it's for adapted people, while we in the European are often used for unadapted, so people who just come in also feel that the air is acceptable. And then we have on the European level, for the building part, we want to make some incentive for people who are making good building materials, that they can get some benefits. So we have the kind of 3 types of building. Normal for new building, it's a low polluted building, but if you have done an extra effort to use material with low emission, we can say we have a very low polluted building. And the contribution in liters per second per square meter will then decrease. In existing buildings, you may have higher values. But what we have introduced in the revision of the standard is a baseline. The total ventilation can never go below, or must never go below 4 liters per second per person. And that's based on health risk, and it's based on a European EU study on the relation between ventilation and health. Now, the gray area here is to find out, when do you have a low pollutant building? When do you have a very low pollutant building? There has then been put some criteria to the emission from different materials, or VOCs or formaldehyde. So if you meet these criteria for the building materials you use, then you can say you are in a very low pollutant building. There are now several certification schemes in Europe on classifying building materials. We have one in Denmark, they have one in Belgium. There are some work on making an European classification, because that would help. Then it would maybe easier to specify how you materials relate to the level of ventilation. But definitely we have built in an incentive that you can decrease the ventilation if you use less low-emitting materials. But again, the total ventilation, the people part plus for the materials, cannot be below 4 liters per second. And this is, again, how you then calculate the total ventilation rate. Here we have a factor called the ventilation efficiency. Normally we assume complete mixing, but in some cases you may not have complete mixing. So we have to take into how efficient your ventilation system is. And there is another standard, and also in ASHRAE 62.1 there is table with recommended efficiencies for different types of configuration of ventilation system. If you now just take a comparison here for a single office, so we have a 10 square meter office, so it's 0.1 person per square meter, and the people part in the ASHRAE standard was 2.5 liters per second. In the European, for that time it was level B, but level 2 it's 7. So when we take a local building, we will come up with a total 1.4 liters per second per square meter. If we use European, where the ASHRAE standard would be about 0.55. So it will, they recommend lower value, and to big extent it is because you design for adapted people. It is said in ASHRAE standard you can also design for non-adapted, and then the behaviors will be more similar. You can also specify criteria based on CO2, not because the CO2 in itself is at those levels are give any health risk, but it's an indicator on how much you ventilate per person. All people, they expire CO2, so we can use that as a tracer for how much we ventilate. The real problem you get when you're up at 4,000 or 5,000 ppm. So this is one way also looking at it. In the standard we are also saying if you have special pollutant sources, or you're afraid you have, for example, too many materials that emit formaldehyde, you should do a calculation like a mass balance analysis of the emission you have from your materials, concentration outside, and what is the recommended health limit, to see if this value for ventilation will be higher than the one you estimated from the tables for perceived air quality. Again here we need values for emission from material, we have some, but also we need health criteria. We don't have many. What we are referring to is the WHO guidelines, which has health criteria for some components, but not for all the 2,000 or 4,000 chemicals you may find indoors. But fortunately, if you fulfill for the perceived air quality, in most cases, you will be okay. We are putting a little more emphasis on filtration and air cleaning. In fact, we will, in the technical guideline, also show how you can reduce concentration in odors and gaseous contaminants by gas-based air cleaning. What is needed here is that we get certification of air cleaners, because we have seen air cleaners using chemical reactions that make the air worse than it was before. So we have to be very careful, and there is a need for certification of air cleaners. But in many cases, that's one way where you could save energy but also improve the indoor environment. So the last two things I just want to bring up here is we also have some criteria for lighting. The lighting people didn't think that they could establish like a different level, so they basically, we have some criteria depending on the workplace for the light levels in lux, the illumination. There's also some related to glare. And what we have introduced is also recommended levels of daylight. So we have put in some daylight factors. And here we have the situation, we have to be a little careful, because the more daylight you want to get in, the more sunshine you normally get in, so you risk to have overheating. So you need here to find a balance. But daylighting has been introduced now also as a criteria in the standard. And finally, there is some requirement to noise. You could say noise does not directly influence the energy consumption of buildings. But if your systems of ventilation system are noisy, people, they will shut them off, they will have no ventilation. If you plan to use natural ventilation with openings of windows, it will not work if this building is in an area with a lot of noise from outside, from traffic. So that's why we have these criteria.
5 minutes remaining, Mr. Olsen.
Thank you. So, with these criteria, there's one parameter which may screw up the whole thing, and that is what people are doing in the space. So what we have also put in is occupant schedules you should use when you do the energy calculation. Because the way you define the occupant schedules, you can almost get any energy consumption you will calculate it. So we are putting in some standardized, you cannot read all the values, where we have the criteria, but also some internal loads, and then factors assuming how many people will be in the space at a given time during the day. So we will have a set of standardized occupant schedules for different types of rooms and buildings like residential, classroom, offices, and so on. So all this will now, the next months, here on the European level, and then also the ISO standard on the ISO level go out for inquiry. So you will, through your standard organization, have a chance now to comment on these. It will be over 5 months, ending probably in May. But these standards, which are used in the building design, does of course not guarantee that the people here at the end, that they are satisfied. There are so many people involved. First of all, you have seen that some of the requirements, there are some gray areas. We still need more research related to occupant comfort and health. We have very few health criteria for different parts of the indoor air quality. And also the building research, how can we get better models for predicting the indoor environment? And then again, when you then do the installation, again, you can make so many mistakes that the systems are not working. You may do commissioning, but after that you don't have any inspection. So this part is also an important factor. And then of course the operation of the buildings and the occupant themselves is very important. So we really have to look at the whole value chain before we can guarantee that we really get an acceptable indoor environment. And so, and this is my last slide, also by the initiative of the former President Bill Bartlett and ASHRAE, we have established a global alliance between different societies where we would try, and we are just starting, and it takes time, it's a slow start, but we have started, to work together and put more emphasis on the indoor environment. And in this way, we would like to cover all, let's say, all people, all groups that has an influence on this value chain. So make sure that we kind of talk the same language and we have the same criteria when we talk about indoor environmental quality. Thank you.